This is what a day in your dream life looks like. You wake up and you're already excited because you've got a fun car waiting for you outside, just itching to get going. It puts you in the perfect mood to take on the day, turning you into someone who's always happy and charismatic. But this is the ideal scenario. Is it even realistic to daily drive a sports car? I mean, if this is your only car, you'll have to drive it every single day, whether you're in a good mood or bad. You might find yourself wishing you had more space for people and things, or amenities for comfort and entertainment. Could you regret buying a Focus sports car to drive each and every day? To figure this out, let's take a look at what life might look like without one. And it would probably look a bit like this.
Oh god, fuck! Fucking piece of shit. Ow! Fuck.
Your boring car has been taking a toll on your life for far too long, so you decide to make a change.
You know what? Fuck this!
So you decide it's time to buy a new car, but it's hard to know what you should buy. Should you buy an impractical sports car that you might end up hating? What if it's dangerous or expensive? These thoughts were all swirling around in my head, causing me anxiety and overwhelm while I was just trying to figure out what my first car should be. Until finally, I decided on what I thought was the perfect car. So I worked endlessly at the local pool, guarding lives of innocent children and letting the future pedophiles and rapists drown. I saved all of my shillings and I finally bought the perfect car. I was so excited. I had finally achieved my dream of buying my own car, something I've been dreaming about for years before. The reason I bought a Honda is because, well, they're just notoriously cheap and reliable, plus there's a huge aftermarket of performance or visual mods I could do. I mean, sure, it was just a commuter car, but Civics are light, so with a manual transmission and a rev-happy Honda motor, I thought it would be really fun to drive. But what they don't tell you is that commuter cars are designed and built for just that. They're built to get good fuel economy, be dependable, subtle, and otherwise not require much thought by the owner. Because of that, they're usually given front-wheel drive and a boring engine. Mine had a Honda D-Series motor, which is basically the worst engine they make and is anything but rev-happy. So I ended up with my worst nightmare. I had bought a car that I thought would be perfect, but I wound up in the same place, with a car so boring I thought about loading a gun each time I had to drive it. And worse yet, I had spent all my money on the Civic, which meant I had no hope of buying something else unless I could somehow get all my money back. But regardless, I started dreaming. I thought, this is not what it's supposed to be like. I'm supposed to love my car. I'm supposed to be excited about going places, even work. Maybe just so I can earn money to spend on car parts that make my car even better. But the point is that my car should give me a reason to get up in the morning. I needed to find a car that was worth putting my excitement and hard-earned money into. It would make my life significantly better and allow me to join the car scene finally. But I was afraid. I was afraid of changing my mind. I thought, what if this just keeps happening? What if I can never settle on a car that I like? What if people judge me for not being able to stick with my decisions? And through this mental fog of fear and self-doubt, I realized something. It's that life is short and finite. If you feel like changing your mind and it makes sense to do so, then you should do it because you'll either get a better life out of it or a learning experience, so there's really no way to lose. And with that realization, I set my sights on a Miata. I figured if anything's going to be fun to drive, customize, and own, it's going to be one of these. I still feared that it may be too compromised or that I may regret my decision for any of the million other reasons, but I decided to go with what my heart told me and make the leap. I wasn't a fan of the looks or the fact that an accident may result in death or permanent injury, but it had rear-wheel drive, just enough power to have fun but not to get in trouble in, and it was a purpose-built sports car with a sports-tuned exhaust, dual overhead cams, and a 50-50 weight distribution. It was built for fun and not for boredom. But I still had to convince my mom I wasn't crazy. To her, I had bought a perfectly good car, and I was now taking the risk of buying another used car, which was also more dangerous. So with some fear that I may be making the biggest mistake of my life, I finally convinced my mom to give me a loan, and when the right Miata popped up for sale, I went out and I bought it. Now, the good news is that I actually sold my Civic for more than I bought it for. The Miata was more expensive though, so I ended up with $0 left over, which meant I needed it to be reliable. And it was! It's now 3 years later, and I've never seriously regretted my decision. Now, initially I feared that the looks would be a deal breaker, but they ended up actually growing on me a surprising amount, especially due to the subtle enhancements I did. I was also afraid of crashing in it, obviously because it's so small, but this has actually made me a much safer driver. I'm now one of the safest drivers I know, just because I'm constantly thinking about how extremely dead I would be if I ever crashed this thing, or allowed someone else to crash into me. Now, the worst thing about the practicality is that you can only take one passenger at a time, which can be a bummer sometimes, but I actually managed to move all my stuff to and from college in it despite, and if you're able to be creative, it's surprisingly practical. Over the years, I've even had several periods where I stopped caring about cars almost completely, but the Miata was never so involved that it became annoying. Just remember that you don't have to be obsessed with cars to drive a sports car. That's why lots of non-car people drive them too. And by now, I'm pretty much back in love with it. This car feels like my own adolescent version of a Ferrari, except when I don't drive it, the battery actually stays charged. The Miata's pleasing to look at, like a Ferrari. It draws a ton of attention just driving down the street, like a Ferrari. Actually, I get a ton of compliments on it, and since I never drive anything faster or more agile, it feels just like a Ferrari too. It's far more engaging and visceral than the Civic ever could have been. The gearbox is extremely satisfying, just like the handling, and whenever I drive this car, I actually go a longer route to my destination just so I can have the satisfaction of hucking the perfectly balanced chassis through a roundabout. And though it might not make much power, once you get used to it, the engine is extremely exciting to rev out. The last 500 RPMs before redline are as satisfying as wringing the neck of some cute furry animal until its eyes pop out of its head and you finally change up a gear. Since it's rear-wheel drive and mine has the optional limited slip differential, I've been able to learn to drift and practice catching slides.
Oh, that was so fun.
It's the perfect car to learn driving in because of the 50-50 weight distribution.
Holy.
And it's also a car that will grow with your skill and your bank account. You can improve the handling yet by installing coilovers, and when you finally decide it's time for more power, turbocharging a Miata will give you a light, powerful rear drive beast to rival any mass-produced Ferrari. The possibilities with this platform are near infinite, so even after you're done daily driving it, you can turn it into a drift beater, a race car, or a safari off-roader. Overall, the NA and NB Miatas, or any other highly compromised sports cars, may be the perfect car for anyone who wants something fun or cool to appease their love of cars every day. These are actually cars you can fall in love with for their brilliance and for their imperfections alike. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and if you want to learn more about choosing your first car or your only car, then check out this video I made previously. It's actually the first video I ever put on my channel, so it's gonna be a bit shit compared to this one, but the ideas in there are still good, and it gives you a chance to check out some of my other videos. And then you could go on there and you could press subscribe because you like my videos so much. Go, oh, I love your videos. Ah.